You leave another gathering, and the silence in your car feels like medicine, not because you hate people, but because you've just spent 3 hours translating yourself into a language they understand, and now you're exhausted from the effort. Schopenhauer would tell you this exhaustion isn't weakness, it's intelligence, recognizing its own violation. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. He wrote from his Frankfurt apartment, where he lived for the last 30 years of his life, seeing almost no one, writing his greatest works, finally free from the tyranny of other people's expectations. The world called him bitter. He called himself awake. But here's what no one tells you about Schopenhauer's solitude. It wasn't escape, it was strategy. He understood something about human psychology that we're only now proving scientifically. Every moment you spend in society, you're not just socializing, you're being colonized. Your thoughts are being replaced with groupthink. Your authentic reactions are being edited for acceptability. Your energy is being harvested for others' comfort. And the most insidious part, you're doing it to yourself. Let me share something Schopenhauer observed that will change how you see every social interaction. He noticed that people don't actually communicate, they perform communication. Watch closely next time you're in a group. Notice how everyone waits for their turn to speak, not to respond to what was said, but to deliver their pre-planned performance. Notice how laughter erupts at moments that aren't funny, just socially appropriate. Notice how everyone's face arranges itself into expressions that mirror the group's emotional temperature, not their actual feelings. This is what Schopenhauer called the comedy of society, except nobody's laughing because everyone's too busy acting. Modern neuroscience confirms what Schopenhauer intuited. When we're in social situations, our brains literally shut down certain areas of authentic self-expression and activate regions associated with social monitoring. We're not being ourselves, we're being our projection of what we think others want us to be. And this neurological shapeshifting is exhausting. Brain scans show that social interaction activates the same stress regions as physical threats. Your body literally treats socializing as danger. Why? Because it is dangerous to your authenticity, to your energy, to your capacity for original thought. Schopenhauer wrote, "The person who doesn't enjoy solitude won't love freedom, because it's only when alone that one is truly free." But he wasn't making a poetic statement. He was describing a psychological reality that most people never confront. In society, you're never free. You're constantly negotiating, constantly adjusting, constantly suppressing parts of yourself that might disturb the social harmony. Think about your last conversation. How much of what you said was actually what you thought? How much was what you knew would be acceptable? How often did you bite your tongue, rearrange your face, modulate your voice to fit the social frequency? This is the invisible labor that drains intelligent people dry. Because the more conscious you are, the more aware you become of this constant performance. You see yourself doing it. You watch yourself betraying your authenticity in real time. And that awareness itself becomes another layer of exhaustion. But when you stay home, something profound happens. The performance ends. The mask drops. And for the first time all day, you can actually breathe. Schopenhauer understood this relief intimately. He structured his entire life around protecting his solitude. He woke at the same time every day, wrote in the morning when his mind was clearest, walked alone in the afternoon, read in the evening. No visitors, no obligations, no performances. Just the pure, unmediated experience of being himself. The world called him antisocial. He called it self-preservation. Because here's what Schopenhauer discovered that most people never will. Loneliness isn't being alone, it's being surrounded by people who require you to be someone you're not. The deepest loneliness happens in crowds, not in solitude. When you're alone, you're with someone who knows you completely yourself. When you're with others, you're with strangers who know only your performance. Studies from the University of California confirm this paradox. People with higher IQs report more satisfaction from solitude and less satisfaction from social interaction. Not because they're antisocial, but because they're hypersocial, so aware of social dynamics that they can't turn off their analysis. They see the scripts everyone's following. They notice the patterns everyone else misses. They understand the game too well to enjoy playing it. This is what Schopenhauer meant when he wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Ignorance allows for easier social integration because you don't see the machinery, you don't notice the performance, you don't recognize the emptiness behind the noise. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when staying home stops being antisocial and starts being revolutionary. Because every time you choose solitude over empty socializing, you're reclaiming something precious, your attention, your energy, your authenticity. You're refusing to participate in the collective delusion that proximity equals connection, that noise equals meaning, that being busy equals being alive." Schopenhauer put it brutally. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. 3/4. Sit with that number. You're giving away 75% of who you are just to fit in, just to be acceptable, just to avoid the discomfort others feel when confronted with authenticity. And for what? For the approval of people who don't even know you? For the validation of those who would reject you instantly if you showed them who you really are? For the comfort of belonging to a group that demands your self-betrayal as the price of admission? This is the transaction most people never examine. They trade their authenticity for acceptance, not realizing they're accepting counterfeit currency, because the acceptance you get by being fake is itself fake. It's not you they're accepting, it's your performance. And that performance becomes a prison you can never escape as long as you maintain it. But in solitude, the prison dissolves. There's no one to perform for, no one to impress, no one to disappoint except yourself. And that's when the real work begins. If you're finding deep resonance with these uncomfortable truths about solitude and society, you're exactly who the Gentleman Philosopher channel was created for. We explore the philosophies that most people find too confronting, too real, too threatening to their comfortable illusions. Subscribe now and join a community of minds that choose truth over comfort, depth over surface, authenticity over acceptance. Hit that notification bell because what we discuss here isn't trending, it's eternal. Schopenhauer called this real work, the cultivation of inner life. While others chase external validation, the solitary person develops internal resources. They build a relationship with themselves that's more nourishing than most relationships with others. They learn to generate their own meaning instead of borrowing it from the crowd. This isn't about becoming a hermit, it's about being selective. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and authenticity are finite resources that shouldn't be squandered on interactions that leave you emptier than when you began. Modern research backs this up. A Harvard study spanning 80 years found that the quality of relationships matters far more than quantity. One genuine connection is worth more than 100 superficial ones. But here's what the study didn't say explicitly. The most important genuine connection is with yourself. And that connection can only be cultivated in solitude. When you stay home, you're not avoiding life. You're choosing it. You're choosing to spend your finite hours on earth being real rather than performing reality. You're choosing depth over surface, substance over appearance, truth over comfort. But let's go deeper into what Schopenhauer really meant by solitude. He wasn't talking about physical isolation alone. He was talking about psychological sovereignty, the ability to think without seeking approval, to feel without requiring validation, to exist without needing witnesses. Most people have never experienced this sovereignty. From birth, they're trained to seek external confirmation for every thought, feeling, and decision. Am I doing this right? Do others approve? Am I normal? These questions become so internalized that people don't even realize they're asking them constantly, unconsciously, exhaustingly. Schopenhauer saw this as the fundamental slavery of human existence, not political or economic slavery, but psychological bondage to the opinions of others. He wrote, "The opinion of others about us is of quite disproportionate concern to most people. It is a kind of mania. This mania drives people to extraordinary lengths of self-betrayal. They choose careers based on prestige rather than passion. They maintain relationships that drain them because ending them would look bad. They attend events they dread because absence would be noticed. They literally organize their entire lives around managing others' perceptions. And the tragedy is that those others are doing exactly the same thing. Everyone's performing for everyone else, and no one's actually living. It's a massive theatrical production where everyone's acting and no one's watching because they're all too busy with their own performance. Schopenhauer saw through this charade. He realized that the only way to exit the theater was to stop needing applause. And the only way to stop needing applause was to develop such a rich inner life that external validation became irrelevant. This is why he spent his mornings writing philosophy that wouldn't be appreciated for decades. Why he spent his afternoons walking alone, thinking thoughts no one else would understand. Why he spent his evenings reading in languages most people couldn't speak. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, there was no one around to impress. He was feeding his mind because a well-fed mind doesn't need the junk food of social validation. But here's what's crucial. Schopenhauer's solitude wasn't empty. It was fuller than most people's social lives. While others filled their time with empty chatter, he filled his with profound contemplation. While others collected acquaintances, he collected insights. While others pursued popularity, he pursued truth. And truth, Schopenhauer discovered, is allergic to crowds. It emerges only in the quiet, spaces where social pressure can't reach. It speaks only to minds that have stopped performing long enough to listen. It reveals itself only to those who value it more than comfort, more than acceptance, more than belonging. This is why every major breakthrough in human understanding came from someone who spent enormous amounts of time alone. Einstein's theory of relativity, Darwin's evolution, Newton's laws of physics. These weren't discovered in committee meetings or social gatherings. They were discovered in solitude by minds that had disconnected from the collective consciousness long enough to think originally. Schopenhauer understood this pattern. He wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But you can't see invisible targets while you're busy watching visible ones. You can't think original thoughts while you're recycling collective ones. You can't discover new territories while you're following well-worn paths. Solitude is where the invisible becomes visible, where the impossible becomes possible, where the self you're meant to be emerges from beneath the self you're pretending to be. But society fears this emergence. It needs conformity to function. It needs predictability to maintain order. It needs people to follow scripts, play roles, maintain the illusion that the emperor has clothes. When someone chooses solitude, they're essentially saying, I refuse to participate in your collective delusion. And that refusal is threatening. It suggests that the delusion is optional, that the performance isn't necessary, that there might be another way to live. This is why society pathologizes solitude. We're told that wanting to be alone is unhealthy, antisocial, a sign of depression or dysfunction. We're pressured to get out more, to be social, to stop isolating. The message is clear. Solitude is suspicious, dangerous, wrong. But Schopenhauer knew better. He recognized that the pathology isn't in solitude. It's in society's desperate need for constant company. The dysfunction isn't in choosing to be alone. It's in being unable to be alone. The real mental illness is the terror of one's own company, the inability to exist without external stimulation, the addiction to others' presence as a drug against self-awareness. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This freedom terrifies most people, because with freedom comes responsibility. When you're alone, you can't blame others for your thoughts, your choices, your life. You can't hide behind "everyone's doing it" or "society made me." You're face to face with your own agency, your own power, your own responsibility for who you're becoming. This confrontation with personal responsibility is what most people are really avoiding when they avoid solitude. They don't want to face the fact that they're choosing their own misery, that they're complicit in their own oppression, that they could change everything if they just stopped needing everyone's approval. Schopenhauer faced this truth daily. He took full responsibility for his isolation, his unpopularity, his reputation as a pessimist. He didn't blame society for not understanding him. He simply chose his truth over their comfort. his authenticity over their acceptance, his solitude over their shallow company. And in that choosing he found something most people never find: genuine peace. Not the fake peace of social harmony, but the real peace of internal alignment, the peace of being exactly who you are without apology or explanation, the peace of thinking your own thoughts without checking if they're acceptable, the peace of existing without performing existence. This peace is available to anyone willing to pay its price: solitude. Not occasional solitude, but regular, sustained, defended solitude. The kind that requires saying no to invitations, the kind that disappoints others, the kind that gets you labeled as antisocial, weird, difficult. But here's the secret Schopenhauer discovered: those labels are compliments in disguise. Antisocial means you've stopped participating in social charades. Weird means you've stopped conforming to arbitrary norms. Difficult means you've stopped being easy to manipulate. These labels are society's way of trying to shame you back into compliance. But when you understand what they really mean, they lose their power. They become badges of honor, proof that you're succeeding in the most difficult task any human can undertake: being yourself in a world that profits from your conformity. Schopenhauer wore these badges proudly. He was antisocial and productive. He was weird and brilliant. He was difficult and authentic. He chose to be misunderstood rather than to misunderstand himself. This choice is available to you right now. Not tomorrow, not after. You've prepared. Not when conditions are perfect. Right now, you can choose solitude over empty company. You can choose depth over surface. You can choose yourself over the endless demands of others. But most people won't make this choice. They'll read these words, feel their truth, even agree with them, and then return to their performance. They'll continue sacrificing their authenticity for acceptance, their energy for approval, their life for the comfort of belonging. And that's fine. Not everyone is meant for the path of solitude. Not everyone can handle the confrontation with self that silence brings. Not everyone has the strength to exist without the crutch of constant company. But if you're still reading, if these words are resonating rather than repelling, if you're feeling recognition rather than resistance, then you might be one of the rare ones. One of those who can not only tolerate solitude but thrive in it. One of those who finds more in aloneness than most find in company. One of those who understands that staying home isn't antisocial, it's the most deeply social thing you can do, because it's where you develop the self that's actually worth sharing. Schopenhauer believed that human beings fell into two categories: those who need others to know themselves, and those who need solitude to know themselves. The first group is larger, louder, more visible. The second is smaller, quieter, but infinitely more powerful. Because power, real power, doesn't come from how many people you know, or how well you network, or how popular you are. It comes from how deeply you know yourself, how clearly you think, how authentically you live. And all of that is cultivated not in crowds but in solitude. If you recognize yourself in this second category, if you're one of those who need solitude like others need society, then the Gentleman Philosopher is your intellectual home. We dive deep into the philosophies that validate your need for solitude, that explain your discomfort with superficial socializing, that affirm your choice of depth over breadth. Subscribe and join a community of solitary thinkers who understand that the best conversations often happen in the silence of your own mind. Think about the last time you had an original thought. Not an opinion you absorbed from others, not a belief you inherited from your culture, but a genuine, original thought that emerged from your own contemplation. When did it happen? Chances are, it happened when you were alone. In the shower, on a walk, lying in bed at night, those liminal spaces where social influence can't reach. These moments of original thinking are precious. They're when you're most truly yourself, most genuinely alive, most authentically human. But they require solitude to emerge. They can't compete with the noise of others' thoughts, the pressure of social expectations, the distraction of constant interaction. Schopenhauer structured his entire life to maximize these moments. His daily routine was a fortress protecting his solitude. He knew that every interruption, every unexpected visitor, every social obligation was a theft stealing not just time, but the mental space necessary for deep thought. He wrote, "Interruption is the enemy of thought." But most people's lives are nothing but interruption. Phone notifications, social media alerts, text messages, emails, constant demands for attention that fragment consciousness into ever smaller pieces until original thought becomes impossible. This fragmentation isn't accidental. A fragmented mind is easier to control, easier to influence, easier to sell to. A person who can't think deeply, can't question deeply. They can't see through manipulation. They can't resist suggestion. They become perfect consumers, perfect followers, perfect participants in whatever system they find themselves in. Solitude is rebellion against this fragmentation. It's the radical act of putting your consciousness back together, of reclaiming your attention from those who would harvest it for their own purposes. It's saying, "My mind is not a commons for others to graze in. It's a private garden where I grow my own thoughts." But growing your own thoughts requires time, patience, and most importantly, silence. Seeds of insight don't germinate in noise. They need the quiet, dark soil of solitude to take root, to grow strong enough to eventually bloom into understanding. This is why Schopenhauer valued boredom. Yes, boredom that state everyone tries to avoid. He saw it not as emptiness, but as potential. When you're bored, your mind isn't being fed external stimulation. It has to generate its own. And in that generation, that creative response to emptiness, original thoughts emerge. But most people can't tolerate boredom for even minutes. They reach for their phones, turn on the TV, call someone, do anything to avoid the discomfort of an unstimulated mind. They don't realize they're avoiding the very condition necessary for creativity, for insight, for genuine thought. Schopenhauer embraced boredom. He sat with it, explored it, learned from it. He discovered that on the other side of boredom lies fascination, but with yourself, your thoughts, your inner world. The external world becomes less necessary when the internal world becomes more interesting. This is the ultimate goal of solitude, to become so interesting to yourself that you don't need others' entertainment. To develop such a rich inner life that external stimulation becomes optional, not obligatory. To find in your own mind what most people desperately seek in others' company. But this development takes time. You can't build a rich inner life in occasional moments of solitude. You need sustained periods of aloneness, regular appointments with yourself, defended boundaries around your mental space. This is why Schopenhauer was so rigid about his routine. It wasn't neurosis, it was wisdom. He knew that without structure protecting his solitude, society would slowly, inevitably encroach. A coffee here, a dinner there, and suddenly his days would be filled with others' agendas instead of his own thoughts. He wrote, "The highest, most varied and lasting pleasures are those of the mind. But mental pleasures require mental space, and mental space requires physical solitude. You can't think deeply while managing others' emotions. You can't contemplate existence while making small talk. You can't discover truth while maintaining lies." So Schopenhauer chose truth over company, depth over breadth, quality over quantity. He had few friends but profound thoughts, few conversations but deep insights, few social pleasures but infinite mental ones. The world called this a poor trade, but Schopenhauer knew better. He knew that one genuine insight is worth more than 1,000 shallow conversations. That one moment of authentic self-knowledge is worth more than a lifetime of others' approval. That 1 hour of true solitude is worth more than days of empty socializing. This valuation system is completely inverted from society's. Society measures worth by external metrics, popularity, connections, social status. Schopenhauer measured worth by internal metrics, depth of thought, authenticity of being, clarity of vision. By society's standards, he was a failure. By his own standards, he was triumphant. And that's the choice every thinking person eventually faces. Whose standards will you live by? Whose approval will you seek? Whose validation will determine your worth? If you choose society's standards, the path is clear and crowded. Socialize constantly, network relentlessly, perform enthusiastically. Trade your authenticity for acceptance, your depth for breadth, your truth for comfort, You'll have company, but you'll lose yourself. If you choose your own standards, the path is unclear and lonely. You'll spend long hours alone. You'll miss social opportunities. You'll be misunderstood, labeled, dismissed. But you'll have something far more valuable than company. You'll have yourself. Your real self, not the performance. Your true thoughts, not recycled opinions. Your authentic life, not a scripted existence. Schopenhauer made his choice and never wavered. For 30 years, he chose solitude over society, depth over surface, truth over comfort. The world didn't understand. But he didn't need the world's understanding. He had his own. And that's the ultimate message of Schopenhauer's life. You don't need the world's understanding if you have your own. You don't need others' approval if you approve of yourself. You don't need external validation if you have internal conviction. This isn't arrogance, it's autonomy. It's the recognition that your consciousness is yours alone, and you have both the right and the responsibility to protect it from colonization, to keep it clear, focused, authentic, to use it for thinking rather than conforming, for creating rather than consuming, for being rather than seeming. Every moment of solitude is a moment of resistance against the forces that would fragment your consciousness, harvest your attention, colonize your thoughts. It's a declaration of psychological independence, a claim of mental sovereignty, an assertion of spiritual autonomy. This is why staying home isn't just personal preference, it's political action. It's refusing to participate in the attention economy. It's declining to contribute to the performance of false community. It's choosing real solitude over fake connection. And in that choosing, something profound happens. You stop being who society needs you to be and start being who you actually are. You stop thinking what you're supposed to think and start thinking what you actually think. You stop feeling what's acceptable to feel and start feeling what you actually feel. This authenticity is terrifying at first. Without the script of social expectation, you don't know what to say. Without the rhythm of others' validation, you don't know how to move. Without the mirror of society's approval, you don't know if you're okay. But slowly, in the silence of solitude, your own voice emerges. Quiet at first, uncertain, but gradually stronger, clearer, more confident. You begin to hear what you actually think beneath the noise of what you're supposed to think. You begin to feel what you actually feel beneath the performance of acceptable emotion. You begin to know who you actually are beneath the costume of social identity. This is the gift of solitude, self-discovery. Not the self that others see, not the self that fits in, but the self that exists independent of observation, validation, or approval. The self that thinks unauthorized thoughts, feels unacceptable feelings, asks dangerous questions. This self has always existed, waiting beneath the performance, preserved in the silence you've been avoiding. Every moment of solitude is an opportunity to meet this self, to know this self, to become this self. But becoming requires unbecoming first, unbecoming the social performance, unbecoming the acceptable persona, unbecoming everything you've pretended to be to fit in, to belong, to be loved. This unbecoming happens naturally in solitude. Without an audience, the performance becomes pointless. Without observers, the mask becomes unnecessary. Without others' expectations, you're free to discover your own. Schopenhauer went through this unbecoming. He shed the expectation that he should be social, successful by conventional standards, understood by his contemporaries. He unbecome everything society wanted him to be, and in that unbecoming, he became himself. The world wasn't ready for who he became. His philosophy was too honest, too uncomfortable, too threatening to the illusions people needed to maintain. But he didn't dilute his truth for mass consumption. He didn't soften his edges for social acceptance. He didn't betray his insights for popularity. Instead, he wrote for the future, for readers who would understand, for minds that could handle truth without comfort, depth without simplification, reality without sugarcoating. He wrote for you, reading this now, recognizing yourself in his defense of solitude, his validation of your need for aloneness, his explanation of why you've always felt different. You're not different because something's wrong with you. You're different because you can't maintain the illusions that make social life possible for most people. You see through the performance. You recognize the scripts. You understand the game too well to enjoy playing it. This understanding is both curse and blessing. Curse because it isolates you from easy community. Blessing because it frees you from fake connection. Curse because it makes you weird. Blessing because it makes you real. Schopenhauer chose to see it as blessing. He chose to value his authenticity over others' comfort, his truth over their acceptance, his solitude over their shallow company. And in that choosing, he found something most people never find. He found himself. Not the self that others wanted him to be, but the self he actually was. Not the self that fit in, but the self that stood out. Not the self that belonged, but the self that transcended belonging. This self is available to you, waiting in the solitude you've been avoiding, preserved in the silence you've been filling, ready to emerge the moment you stop performing and start being. The world will not celebrate this emergence. It will call you antisocial, selfish, weird. It will pressure you to return to the fold, resume the performance, sacrifice your solitude for its comfort. But you don't have to comply. You can choose what Schopenhauer chose: the dignity of solitude over the indignity of performance, the depth of aloneness over the shallowness of false company, the truth of yourself over the lie of social acceptance. This choice isn't easy. It requires courage, conviction, and most of all, the ability to disappoint others without apologizing, to claim your time without justifying, to protect your solitude without explaining. But for those strong enough to make this choice, the rewards are infinite. Not external rewards, those will likely decrease, but internal rewards, clarity of thought, authenticity of being, depth of understanding, freedom from the exhausting performance of false self. These rewards can't be shared, can't be proven, can't be displayed. They're invisible to others but unmistakable to you. They're the quiet satisfaction of being yourself, the deep peace of authentic existence, the profound relief of no longer pretending. Schopenhauer knew these rewards. They sustained him through 30 years of solitude, criticism, and misunderstanding. They were worth more to him than all the social success he could have had by conforming, all the popularity he could have gained by performing, all the acceptance he could have won by betraying his truth. Now, the question is, are they worth it to you? Is the freedom of solitude worth the price of isolation? Is the authenticity of aloneness worth the loss of easy company? Is the truth of yourself worth the rejection of those who prefer your performance? Only you can answer. But know this: choosing solitude isn't choosing against life. It's choosing for it, for real life, authentic life, your actual life rather than the scripted existence society offers. Staying home isn't retreat. It's advance into yourself, into depth, into truth. It's the most courageous thing you can do in a world that demands your constant presence, performance, and participation in its illusions. So close the door, turn off the phone, cancel the plans. Not forever, but often. Not in anger, but in wisdom. Not as escape, but as return to yourself, to silence, to the solitude that Schopenhauer knew was the birthplace of everything genuine, everything profound, everything real. The world can wait. Your authenticity cannot.